Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into a fascinating pairing, the Enneagram Type 2 and Type 5.
Yeah, at first glance, they might seem like an unlikely match.
Total opposites, right? The helper and the investigator.
Exactly. But that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're going to uncover how these two seemingly different personalities can actually build a strong, fulfilling relationship.
I'm already intrigued. So let's start with the basics. What are the core characteristics that define a Type 2 and a Type 5?
Well, you've got the type 2. They're driven by connection, always ready to lend a helping hand, and super attuned to the emotions of others. Think warm, generous, empathetic.
Always putting others first.
Often, yeah. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you've got the type 5. They thrive on knowledge and independence. They're very much in their own heads, observing, analyzing, and constantly seeking understanding.
So picture this. A Type 2 walks into a room and immediately starts connecting with people, offering help, making everyone feel comfortable.
Right. And meanwhile, the type 5 is in the corner, quietly observing everything, maybe even taking mental notes.
Okay, so we've got these two very distinct personalities. How does that play out when it comes to communication? Because that's like the foundation of any relationship, right?
Absolutely. And this is where we start to see those fascinating differences emerge. Type 2s are all about emotional expression. They communicate through feelings, sharing their experiences, and seeking that deep heart-to-heart connection.
So lots of I feel statements, lots of warmth and vulnerability.
Exactly. Now, type 5s, on the other hand, are much more reserved in their communication. They're driven by logic and facts. Their language is precise, often more focused on information than emotional expression.
So less about sharing feelings and more about sharing knowledge.
Precisely. They might show they care by offering solutions or insightful observations rather than through overt emotional displays.
So if a Type 2 says, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, the Type 5 might respond with, here's a strategy for prioritizing your tasks, rather than, oh, honey, I'm so sorry you're feeling stressed.
Exactly. And that's where things can get tricky. The type 2 might feel like their feelings aren't being acknowledged, while the type 5 might feel like their approach is practical and helpful.
And that, my friends, is the breeding ground for misunderstandings.
Exactly. And this is where personality NFT's insights come in. Understanding these core differences is so key for navigating communication in a type 2, type 5 relationship.
Because it's not about one type being right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that they express themselves differently, and that's okay.
Exactly. It's about learning to appreciate those differences and finding ways to bridge that communication gap.
So we've talked about those big picture differences. But what does this actually look like in day-to-day life? How do these contrasting styles play out in everyday interactions?
Well, imagine this. You walk into a type 2's home, and it's warm, inviting, maybe filled with personal touches, fresh flowers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's probably a delicious smell coming from the kitchen.
Right, because they love expressing care through acts of service. Now, walk into a type 5's home, and it's likely to be more minimalist and organized. Maybe there's a well-stocked library or a dedicated workspace.
Their sanctuary, their thinking space.
Exactly. And that's not to say they're not caring. They express it differently. Maybe they've researched the perfect ergonomic chair for their partner, or they've set up a complex home automation system to make life easier.
So it's those little things that reveal their love language.
Absolutely. And this is where the beauty of this pairing really shines. The type 2 brings that warmth and emotional richness, while the type 5 provides stability and thoughtfulness. It's a beautiful balance.
I love that. So we've talked about communication. We've peeked into their homes. Now let's get into how this dynamic works in different kinds of relationships. Let's start with friendships. How does this Type 2, Type 5 pairing play out in a platonic setting?
Well, a type 2 friend might be the one who's always organizing social gatherings, planning outings, and generally making sure everyone feels included and cared for.
The life of the party, the glue that holds the group together.
Exactly. Now, a type 5 friend might be a bit more reserved in social settings, but they're the ones you go to for deep conversations, insightful advice, or just a listening ear.
So it's like they each bring a different flavor to the friendship, and together they create this really well-rounded, dynamic duo.
Precisely. And that dynamic can be incredibly rewarding for both parties. The type 2 encourages the type 5 to step outside their comfort zone and connect with others, and the type 5 provides the type 2 with intellectual stimulation and a sense of groundedness.
It's like that classic introvert-extrovert pairing, but with an added layer of depth and complexity.
Exactly. And that complexity is what makes this dynamic so fascinating to explore. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how this pairing works in the realm of romance. What happens when a type 2 and a type 5 fall in love?
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Right, it's where things get really interesting because in a romantic relationship, those initial sparks of attraction can quickly turn into a beautiful, slow-burning fire.
So what draws them to each other in the first place?
Well, it's that classic opposites attract scenario. The type 2 is drawn to the type 5's quiet confidence, their intelligence, and their depth of knowledge. And the type 5 is drawn to the type 2's warmth, their generosity, and their ability to connect on an emotional level.
So they each see something in the other that they might be lacking in themselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes this pairing so potentially transformative. They have the opportunity to learn from each other, to grow and evolve in ways they might not have been able to on their own.
So it's not just about finding someone who compliments you. It's about finding someone who challenges you to become a better version of yourself.
Absolutely. And that's where the true magic of compatibility lies. It's about finding someone who helps you expand, to step outside of your comfort zone.
Okay, so we've talked about the attraction. But relationships aren't always smooth sailing, right?
Hmm.
What are some potential challenges that a type 2 and a type 5 might face when those rose-colored glasses come off?
Well, remember how we talked about those different communication styles? That's often where those first bumps in the road appear.
Yeah, the type 2 is all about expressing feelings, while the type 5 is more about logic and facts.
Exactly. And when conflict arises, those differences can become even more pronounced. A type 2 might want to talk it out immediately, process those emotions, seek reassurance, but a type 5, they might need some space to analyze the situation before engaging.
So imagine a disagreement. The type 2 is saying, let's talk about this, I feel hurt. And the type 5 is thinking, okay, let me analyze the situation rationally before I respond.
Exactly. And in that moment, the type 2 might feel ignored or dismissed, while the type 5 feels pressured to respond before they're ready.
Oh, I can see how that would create a cycle of misunderstanding. The type 2 feels unheard, so they push for more connection, and the type 5 retreats further into their head to process.
It can become a bit of a dance, right? And this is where those insights from personality NFT are so helpful, because understanding those different needs during conflict is crucial for finding a resolution that works for both parties.
So how do they learn to dance together, so to speak?
Well, it comes down to communication, but not just any communication. It's about tailoring your approach to the other person's type. The type 2 needs to learn to express their feelings clearly, but also give the type 5 space to process. And the type 5 needs to reassure the type 2 that their need for space isn't personal and commit to coming back to the conversation once they've had time to think.
So it's about creating that sense of safety and understanding, even when those conflict styles clash. Now let's talk about another potential challenge, boundaries. Type 2s are so giving, sometimes to the point of self-sacrifice. How does that dynamic work with the type 5 who values their independence?
Yeah, this can be a tricky area to navigate because a type 2's natural instinct is to help, to give, to nurture, and they might shower their type high partner with attention and support, thinking that's what they need.
But the type 5, who cherishes their independence and alone time, might actually feel smothered by all that attention.
Exactly. It can feel intrusive, like their personal space is being invaded. And this can lead to resentment on both sides. The type 2 feels unappreciated, and the type 5 feels stifled.
Oh, I can see how those good intentions could backfire pretty quickly. So how do they find that balance?
Again, it comes down to communication and understanding those core needs. The type 2 needs to learn that respecting their partner's need for space is actually a way of showing love. And the type 5 needs to be upfront about their boundaries and find ways to express appreciation for the type 2's generosity, even if they don't always want to accept it.
It sounds like it's a dance of give and take, learning to speak each other's love languages while honoring those individual needs. Okay, so we've talked about some of the potential pitfalls, but let's shift gears now and focus on the good stuff. Because despite these challenges, this pairing has some serious strengths, right?
Absolutely. And one of the most beautiful things about this dynamic is how they support each other's growth. They each hold a key to unlocking hidden potential in the other.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about how they help each other grow.
Well, let's start with the type 2. Their empathy and emotional intelligence can be a game changer for the type 5, who might struggle with connecting to their own feelings or understanding the emotional needs of others.
So the type 2 can help the type 5 tap into that emotional realm that they might otherwise keep bottled up.
Exactly. Think of it like this. The type 5 has this vast inner world of knowledge and intellect, but they might not always know how to express it or connect it to their emotions.
And the type 2 comes along and helps them bridge that gap to connect their head to their heart.
Exactly. The type 2 helps them see the human side of those intellectual concepts to find the emotional resonance in their ideas. And this can be incredibly transformative for a type 5, helping them become more well-rounded and compassionate individuals.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now, how does the type 5 support the type two's growth?
Well, the type 5's gift to the type 2 is their grounded, logical perspective and their ability to set healthy boundaries. Remember, type 2s can sometimes get so caught up in helping others that they neglect their own needs.
Right, their desire to please can sometimes lead them to overextend themselves,
Yeah.
even to the point of exhaustion.
Exactly. And that's where the type 5 can step in. They can provide that much-needed reality check, helping the type 2 see when they're giving too much and encouraging them to prioritize their own well-being.
So the type 5 is like that voice of reason, that gentle reminder to take care of themselves.
Exactly. And that's a gift that a type 2 might desperately need. Because let's face it, taking care of yourself is not always easy, especially for those who are naturally drawn to helping others.
It sounds like they each offer the other something they need to thrive, to become more balanced and whole.
It's a beautiful synergy, isn't it? Like two pieces of a puzzle that fit perfectly together.
Okay, so we've talked about those individual growth opportunities, but what about the strengths they bring to the relationship as a whole? What are some of the things that really make this pairing shine?
Well, one of the most remarkable things about this dynamic is the depth of their intellectual connection. Type 5s, with their insatiable curiosity and love of knowledge, are endlessly fascinating to Type 2s, who crave connection and deep conversations.
So it's more than just surface level chatter. They can really dive deep into those big ideas and explore those complex concepts together.
Exactly. Imagine those late night talks about philosophy, science, history, or whatever their shared passions may be. It's not just about exchanging information, it's about enriching each other's perspectives and creating a shared worldview that's both intellectually stimulating and emotionally fulfilling.
So it's like their minds are constantly bouncing off each other, sparking new ideas and insights.
Exactly. And that intellectual synergy can extend beyond just conversations. They might bond over shared hobbies, creative pursuits, or even just a mutual love of learning new things. Maybe they build a complex Lego masterpiece together, or explore a new city, or even just geek out over a documentary about quantum physics.
It sounds like they have this incredible ability to learn and grow together, to constantly expand their horizons as individuals and as a couple.
And let's not forget the power of their complementary strengths in everyday life. The Type 2's ability to connect with people can make social situations much easier for the Type 5, who might otherwise feel a bit awkward or out of their element. And the Type 5's calm and collected demeanor can help the Type 2 navigate emotionally charged situations with more grace and objectivity.
So it's like they each have a superpower that they can share with the other, helping them navigate the world with more confidence and ease.
And that mutual support extends to their emotional well-being as well. The Type 2's warmth and affection can be incredibly soothing for the Type 5, who might struggle with expressing vulnerability. And the Type 5 can provide a sense of stability and security that allows the Type 2 to feel safe enough to open up and share their deepest fears and desires.
So they create this beautiful space of emotional safety and support for each other, where they can be their true selves without fear of judgment.
Exactly, and that's the foundation of a truly healthy and fulfilling relationship, isn't it? Feeling seen, heard, and loved for who you are, quirks and all.
Absolutely. So it seems like this unlikely pairing, the helper and the investigator, might actually have a recipe for something truly special.
They do, and it all comes back to that fundamental principle we've been talking about, understanding and appreciating differences. Because when you embrace those differences, when you see them as strengths rather than weaknesses, you open up a world of possibilities for growth, connection, and love.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from those initial sparks of attraction to the challenges and triumphs of navigating a long-term relationship. But before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to our listeners. How can they apply these insights to their own lives, even if they're not in a Type 2, Type 5 pairing?
That's a great question. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that it's all about understanding. Understanding that everyone approaches the world a little differently. We all have our own unique ways of thinking, feeling, and communicating.
And sometimes those differences can create friction, especially in relationships.
Absolutely. But instead of seeing those differences as obstacles, what if we saw them as opportunities? Opportunities to learn, to grow, to expand our own perspectives.
So it's not about trying to change the other person or make them fit into our mold. It's about meeting them where they are and appreciating those unique qualities that they bring to the table.
Exactly. And that starts with awareness. Just being aware of these different personality types, these different ways of being, can make a huge difference in how we interact with others.
So, for example, if you know you tend to be more of a type 2, always wanting to help and fix things, and you're interacting with someone who's more of a type 5, who needs their space to process, you can adjust your approach accordingly.
Exactly. Maybe instead of jumping in with solutions, you offer a listening ear. You give them space to think things through, and you validate their feelings, even if you don't fully understand them.
And on the flip side, if you're more of a type 5 and you're interacting with someone who's more emotionally expressive, you can make an effort to be more open with your own feelings, even if it feels a bit uncomfortable at first.
Exactly. It's about bridging that gap, finding that common ground where you can both feel seen and understood.
So it's not about erasing those differences, but about using them to create a richer, more dynamic relationship.
Exactly, because those differences are what make life interesting. Imagine a world where everyone was the same. It would be pretty boring, wouldn't it?
Totally. It's like eating plain rice every day. You need a little spice, a little variety to make things flavorful.
Exactly. And those different personality types, they're like the spices of life. They add flavor, they add depth, they challenge us to grow.
So to wrap things up, let's leave our listeners with a challenge. As you go about your day, try to see the people around you through the lens of the Enneagram. Notice their patterns, their strengths, their challenges. And most importantly, ask yourself, how can I use this knowledge to be a better partner, a better friend, a better human being?
That's a beautiful challenge. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination. We're all constantly learning and evolving. So be patient with yourself, be curious about others, and keep exploring the fascinating world of human connection.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the complexities of human personality and relationships. Until then, keep those conversations flowing, those connections strong, and those hearts open.